And now,
it's 10 a.m.
Let's just get down to it.
And it's time for your sports fix.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
From two guys who have covered the teams you're passionate about for years.
We are professionals.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. No Jake Scott again today. He'll be back with us beginning next Monday. Very happy Tuesday to everybody out there. Loaded show today regardless. Mike Smith's going to join us coming up momentarily. Talking some Utah Jazz basketball, back in action tonight against the Boston Celtics before a long 4-game road trip. Come back home for 2 games and go back on the road for 5. So I think we have a pretty good sense over these next, 5, 6, 7, 12 games of what the Jazz are going to look like by mid-January. 9 road games, 3 home games. And some tough opponents mixed in there, including tonight against the Boston Celtics, who the Jazz have already beaten once this season on the road on a Yusuf Nurkic near buzzer beater. We'll see if the Jazz sweep the Celtics. Keontae George listed as questionable due to an illness. Steve Bartle's going to join us coming up at 11. I thought Steve had a good article on the value of Morgan Scalley and the role he's going to play as the head coach at Utah, how it's different than Kyle Whittingham, and why that's a good thing for the Utes. We'll talk about that, certainly, what he expects from the transfer portal, what he expects from the coaching hires. John Henry Daley this morning threw his name into the transfer portal. Maybe a surprise to some, including myself, that he will be available by spring. That's certainly a good sign wherever he's going. I thought it would be a longer injury than that, so good for John Henry Daley, but bad for the University of Utah. I would imagine Michigan would be very highly ranked in his transfer portal destinations. And then Cole Bagley will join us as the Utah Mammoth suffer a bad loss last night at home to the Nashville Predators, giving up a couple of goals despite having a late lead. What's going on with the Utah Mammoth? Feeling like they're playing very well, despite the fact that the team has not. So we'll talk to Cole about that, what he sees as the issues with the team since we last spoke to him. So very excited on a very busy show today with the Jazz in action tonight against the Boston Celtics. Boston has been maybe one of the bigger surprise teams in the NBA this year, and they have certainly kept it afloat with the Jazz, despite the fact that they have not had Jason Tatum so far this season. He's been out with the Achilles injury, and they hope to get him back. And some people thought maybe this would be a gap year for the Celtics where they would try and focus on getting a good draft pick, maybe semi-blow up their roster, trade a Derek White, let Jaylen Brown sit for long stretches, get a high draft pick, and then come back with their second idea of a championship team. But that is not the plan. They have been competing very well in the Eastern Conference and look to be making a good push towards the playoffs and hope to add Jason Tatum later in the year. Let's welcome in our next guest. He is a Utah Jazz analyst on the pre-half and post-game shows. Also, you can hear him throughout the broadcast. It is Mike Smith. What's going on, Mike?
Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm doing terrific. Mike, this is a game the Jazz have already beat the Celtics once this year. I don't think anyone before the season maybe penciled in the Jazz going for a sweep, but I think that's very much on the table tonight.
The way they're playing offensively, the way they're playing the last couple of games, they would have some momentum. So, yeah, I would say it's possible for sure. It's going to be electric. I tried to get a little extra tickets tonight. None of those in sight, which is a good thing, I guess. So it'll be fun.
I was surprised the Jazz beat the Detroit Pistons and San Antonio Spurs on back-to-back nights. I think everybody was. But again, the story has been that Keontae George, even since we last talked, Mike, is better than he was when we last spoke. Over his last 8 games, he's averaging 30 points, something like 7 assists, 4 rebounds, 5 rebounds, 49% from the floor, 40% from 3, 90% from the free throw line. The stat out there is that the only other 2 players in NBA history who have done that over an 8-game stretch are Michael Jordan and Luka Doncic, who are pretty good players.
Wow.
Are we recognizing that not only has Keontae taken a step, beyond where he was last season, but he really is playing some of the best basketball of anybody in the NBA?
He really is. And I think those of us who are close to the Jazz program, and I'm speaking like you and I and those who watch, the fans who attend, sometimes you are tainted a little bit by what you've seen before. And I don't think we should be. And I only mean that we watched this kid enter the NBA at 19. We watched him try and play point guard for the first time in his life. We watched him not be able to finish at the rim with great consistency. We watched him in year 2, let's say not shoot it that well, right? Because 39% and 33% from 2 and 3 would not qualify as good. But now we watch, and so like in the back of your mind a little bit is, oh, will he revert back to like what we saw before? And I think that's an injustice to him, and I think it's an injustice to, I don't know, like players in general. Take a Cade Cunningham, for example, who I don't get to watch a lot, right? First pick 4 years ago. I think he's in his fifth year, and now he's a stud. And he's leading Detroit to, unprecedented heights with this roster. And it's not like they have the best roster in the league. They're good at the rim with Jalen Duren, and, they block some shots. But he's a stud. I don't get to see him that often. And, Ben, I don't watch the Pistons. That's nothing against the Pistons, but I'm not on a random non-Jazz night turning on the Pistons and saying, oh, let me watch this. But I do get to see him twice a year when he plays the Jazz. And so the progress happens the same way Keontae's growth is happening, yet I don't see every little nook and cranny and pitfall along the way that taints or, hinders the way I might think about that player. All of a sudden I just say, wow, Cade Cunningham in year 5 is a freaking stud. And I think that's the way we should view Keontae. It's kind of like, okay, like what he's doing is remarkable, but it's only going to get better from here. Does that point make sense?
Yeah, I think that's what's a little bit, impressive and exciting if you're a Jazz fan, and a little bit scary if you're the rest of the NBA, is that this is probably only the beginning of Keontae George's ascent. I don't know if we're seeing him top out. His usage isn't through the roof. He still doesn't look for his shot a ton. He does certainly is looking for his shot less than he did before. Now, he's shooting more, but it's coming within the flow of the offense, so I don't feel like he's trying to take over games the way he did for long stretches. And I think actually that pendulum will probably swing back a little bit when he realizes, oh, it's actually probably better if I do dial my own number 3 or 4 more times a game, especially if I'm going to continue to shoot 45% from the floor and 37% from 3.
Yeah, so well said. Like I try and say it on our show that the increased numbers is just not a result of increased volume. Like, yeah, he's taking 19 or 20 shots a game, but you're so spot on when you say they're coming within the flow of the offense. And what he's become really good at is getting fouled. And a lot of great scorers in the history of their careers became frequent foul shooters. They got to the line when it mattered most. That is the number one most important trait that Michael Jordan possessed, other than his killer instinct, is that he knew how to get fouled at the end of games. The 97 and 98 Jazz series can illustrate that better than ever. Like, it wasn't that he made every shot down the stretch, it's that he kept putting pressure on and got fouled. And yeah, it's not beautiful basketball when you shoot a lot of free throws. But how about the Jazz of late, Ben? I think over the last 14 games, where they are 7-7, and 4 of those games Lauri didn't play. So they're a 500 team over those 14 games. They are number 2 in the league in scoring, number 2 in the league in total assists, number 4 in the league in three-point percentage, number 7 in the league in threes made, number 1 in free throws attempted, number 1 in free throws made, number 1 in assist percentage. In other words, the number of baskets that are assisted upon. And if you break that down even a little further, number 1 in the league in two-point buckets that are assisted upon. Far and away the best team in the league in that category, not just the last 14 games, but for the entire season. If this team ever learns to defend, drafts a defender, trades for a defender, starts to get better on that end of the floor, they are a perennial annual playoff team. My opinion right now, they're that good offensively against some of the better teams in the league.
I agree. I think you're probably 2 or 3 Royce O'Neal type players away, which you can get in free agency from being a team that has pretty firmly planted itself in the top 6 in the West, which means you're guaranteed a playoff spot. You're not in the play-in tournament.
Yep, totally agree. And Royce has his flaws, right? There's no perfect players out there. They're just everybody's going to come with a few warts. Royce became a good three-point shooter. He always was a decent defender because that was his calling card to make the league. So it's important to him. And look at Phoenix. They keep winning. I don't know what their record is now. You might have it in front of you. I'm not in front of a screen, but they're either 18-13 or something like that. And I'm like, how are they winning? They're winning with Devin Booker and a bunch of nobodies. Gillespie at the point guard and, Dylan Brooks causing havoc and Royce defending. And so you're so right. You get a couple of those guys whose DNA is to defend. And, things change super quickly.
I got an interesting question. I do a mailbag on Mondays in my podcast, and a listener asked, do the Jazz need to pick between Isaiah Collier or Walt Clayton going forward as the backup point guard, or is there a world where those two and Keontae George can all exist in the backcourt, specifically because they're a little undersized to play the one and the two, though Keontae does it some?
It's a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer. Not sure that it needs to be solved immediately, but like in an ideal world, probably. And I guess it depends what you get on the other end for one of those. But in the meantime, you're watching the progress. Walt seems like, Walt's coming off his best game, right? Like against San Antonio, he was so poised, so cool, made every shot he took, put pressure on the defense. I just thought he was amazing in that game. And I don't know why that happened, but part of me as I was watching that game was thinking, okay, like Ace's teammate Dylan Harper was taken with the second pick in the draft, and, I was taken much later, yet I won a national championship. But to me, it almost felt like I'm going to show Dylan Harper who the best young point guard is that was just drafted. But he didn't force anything. And then, of course, Isaiah just is so big and so strong and so fast with the ball that you almost want to wait and see what becomes of his finishing around the rim. His three-point shot, his outside shooting is better. It's still not a go-to. It's still not something he believes in 100% because he passes up a lot of open shots. And from having played in the league, you can never let your opponents think you're questioning your own ability there. You got to take those open shots when you get them. I know he worked religiously on it over the summer. But if I'm Isaiah Collier and I'm his age, the thing I'm working on most are every little shot inside 6 feet. Ben, every right-hand hook layup, every floater, every spin with either hand, every reverse layup. I try and become Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, two of the greatest layup makers we've ever seen, with an array of shots around the rim, because he can get to the rim at will. And if he just becomes, half of those guys, or just better than he is now at the rim, watch out. He presents a different skill set than Keontae that's worth having, right? It's game-changing, his skill set, the pace, the pressure. Anyway, that's just not me speaking as a Jazz announcer. That's just kind of me as a basketball fan watching and, admiring talent and at the same time suggesting ideas like, oh, you're close to being unbelievable. This is what you need to do.
There is definitely something there with Isaiah. He shoots 37% from three. He only takes one a game, but all he needs to do is make sure you have to guard him closely, because if you guard him closely, then his speed is pretty difficult to stop. And as you mentioned, he's not little and quick. He's huge and quick. I don't know if people realize the jet engine he's got behind him that's propelling him forward. He is all muscle.
Yeah, no question.
So looking at the rest of this Jazz roster, do you think there's going to be interest in Jusuf Nurkic and Kevin Love around the trade deadline? I know Nurkic makes $19 million, and in today's day and age, it's really hard to trade that. But he's been shockingly good, I think, for the Jazz, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And Kevin Love certainly has more in the tank than I expected.
I think you're right on both ends. I don't know about the trade. deadline. I don't know what value there is out there. I don't know. Nurkic has been surprisingly good in the place of Kessler. Bigger than I thought, tougher than I thought. He's just, this will sound terrible, he's just a little careless. And I say that in the nicest way. It's almost like he can get these little shots around the rim, and I think he gets bored with them. Like, I don't know this, but he just strikes me as the guy who just probably leaves something out at his home. Like, he doesn't put it away, right? He just strikes me as this fun-loving, big hunk of a guy who can get every rebound, take up space, and he happens to be so gifted with his hands. I feel like for a guy who picked up the game late, the game came easy to him in terms of touch and feel. Like, he sees passes. He sees little floaters and little flips. Speaking of Boston, right, it's his little putback that wins the game against Boston at Boston earlier in the season. But he misses some of those, and he misses more than he should. And so I chuckle when he misses one, because Elem and I will be sitting there and we'll giggle, and I'll say, yeah, he just got bored with that one. Like, it was too easy for him. And that's sometimes how I feel. Like, the game feels like it comes so easy to him that he doesn't pay the most attention until the final second, like until the ball's done or the pass is completed. But he's an asset for sure, and he's a perfect fit in Will Hardy's, high post rub handoff offense because of the space he creates and the passes he can generate. Kevin Love's just a winner. He just doesn't have a ton left physically. He's got no more lift, which it just happens to the best of us at 18 years and 37, but he can shoot and he thinks the game. He's been so stinking supportive every time he doesn't play. He's the first one up when someone scores. There's really a lot to like about this team and a lot to like about those guys.
Those guys both space the floor. They do it in slightly different ways. Nurkic is only shooting 30% from three, and he only takes 1.5 a game. But like you said, he's always out on the perimeter with the dribble handoffs, and he can pick apart a defense from there. And Kevin Love's basically a spot-up shooter at this point. Do you think the Jazz have liked what they've gotten from having a 5 that can be out on the perimeter? And do you think that's been a reason why Lauri and Keontae are having career years? And does that influence what you think they want that 5 position to do going forward?
Well, it's a great question. I like your insights. Yeah, I mean, it most certainly could be related to the space given to Lauri and to Key. I wouldn't have come up with that myself. I wouldn't have thought, because they have a perimeter 5, these guys are having a career years. I just think they're having career years because they worked their tails off this summer, and it's the next step. Lauri wanted to make amends for a year that was forgettable, and not because he didn't play well. It just was a weird year, and he wanted to erase all that, and he always comes back great after playing in the summer all summer long. He's in such good shape and in such good form, and man, he was so good against San Antonio, Ben. Like, I often call him the most unique 7-footer in the game. And people can correct me because they'll say, what about Victor in San Antonio? I'm like, yeah, I don't think about him that often. But because I think of Lauri as a small forward, like a small forward / big forward who can do anything and score in any way. And I just don't think there's been a 7-footer like that. I really don't. Like, he's way different than Dirk, who's a 7-footer who could also shoot, but he's just so much more than Dirk was, and not better per se. They're different. Lauri's more versatile, more unique, more of a skill set. But then I see Victor, and that people will say, he's the most unique 7-footer. Well, yeah, you're right. 7'5", and he can shoot, and he changes the game. And there was a great stat coming into the Jazz game that in the minutes Victor had played since he came back from injury, the Spurs were only giving up 88 points per 100 possessions, which was why they had won 8 or 9 in a row, other than the Cup final game. But the Jazz neutralized it. And I thought they were going to play Flip or Love or Nurk or even Lauri at the 5 to neutralize Wemby in the game. And as it was Nurk who kind of dragged him away and made a couple threes early and forced there to be some openings. So Nurk played great in that game. But I thought Lauri in that game head-to-head against Wemby was the best 7-footer on the floor. He was that good, that tough, that crucial, that clutch. He's really good. If he doesn't make an all-star team this year, it's a travesty.
I think you brought it up last time we talked, and I think you're dead on, is that he's just so good when he moves, and there are not a lot of 7-footers whose entire game is based off of running every second they're on the floor, especially on the offensive side. That's hard because who do you guard him with? You know, he comes off a curl. He doesn't care if anybody's in front of him because he's probably bigger than you are. And if you're too small, he has shown a willingness to get to the rim.
No, and I think teams have tried to guard him with smaller players, which is one reason why the Jazz last year, let's just say, experimented with putting Lauri with a lot of guard or small forward, big forward swaps, pick and rolls, and then tried to give the ball to Lauri at the elbow. It was like a whole scheme. Let's get Lauri the ball there on a smaller defender and just have him shoot over him. He's okay at that, which we saw last year, not great at that. And he doesn't post up often. He can shoot over people, but he just doesn't gravitate towards that, which is very interesting. So it's to your point and to what I said earlier, it is all about movement for him. And it still makes him tough to guard. If you guard him with length, he's running past him in circles around guys. If you guard him with smaller, his mobility plus strength on the move makes him really difficult to stop.
Mike, I mean, we're 35 games into the season, something like that already, and I feel like I've barely seen you at the Jazz games. What's new with Mike?
Oh, gosh, we're getting through Christmas, right? You know, I have 10 children. That's fun. We had half of those here. It was a blast. I cannot believe the weather we've been having. I did play golf twice last week and twice the week before. Unheard of. This time of year, if you'd told me, Ben, 4 years ago when I moved to Utah, I'd have been playing golf mid or late December. So that was kind of fun. And I think I love my wife more than ever. And that's saying something after all these years. So that's kind of cool. Oh, I'll tell you what, something cool in my life. I've become an ambassador in the state of Utah for General Motors, which is just like one of the coolest things. So GM has like 7 dealerships in the state, and I'm getting to know all those dealerships, all those people who run them, and they are just first and foremost fantastic people. Brian Johnson up at like GMC Riverdale, it's a Ken Garff dealership, is a fantastic guy. Miles Penrose owns the national GMC at American Fork. He's got a guy named Justin Curtis runs that shop. They're just the greatest people. And so, I don't know if you know this about me, Ben. I love people. I love being out in the community. I love getting to know people and finding out what makes them tick or what they're good at or what they're successful at. Oftentimes I'll ask someone, tell me your talents, tell me your strengths, tell me what you're good at. And then I love learning about people. So that's kind of a fun new development. It'll keep me moving around the state when I'm not doing Jazz stuff and doing events and probably speaking to their sales teams and posting different things. But I try and stay busy. I'm looking forward to a fantastic 2026. That's about it, brother. I'm still jealous of your long locks. And I got to keep my hair short so I can look presentable on TV. And that's it. I think you're a fantastic writer.
Mike, I appreciate you. You've got better hair than I do. There's no doubt about that, but I appreciate the nice words.
You got it. See you tonight.
We'll talk to you soon, Mike. There he is. Mike Smith giving us a breakdown on the Utah Jazz. When we come back, the top 3 stories at KSLSports.com. Stick around, Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
It's time to break down the biggest stories of the day. This is the top 3 stories of the day on KSLSports.com. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake out today. Christian and I rolling, not solo, but there's 2 of us. But no Jake. We'll have you covered. What are we going to do for What You Got Wednesday tomorrow? Is it going to be you and me?
If you want. I've done it with
can.
Jake before. It was pretty fun.
Okay. Well, think about it. Think about some ideas. Time for the top 3 stories at KSLSports.com. It's sponsored by our friends at J. Brooks Jewelers. J. Brooks, cherish your loved ones. J. Brooks Jewelers. Explore their expertly crafted engagement rings made from the finest materials. JBrooksJewelers.com. That's JBrooksJewelers.com. 2 locations up and down the Wasatch Front. Christian, where are we starting today?
Well, Ben, this came out right before the show started. Utah standout defensive end John Henry Daley has announced he will be entering the transfer portal.
Was he Utah's best player last year?
I think that's fair to say.
He's probably in the conversation. Certainly had to be there. Wayshawn Parker picked it up towards the end of the season. Certainly, Devin Dampier, when you're a starting quarterback, you're impactful. And he was a good starting quarterback. Utah finishes with 10 wins as a result and has a bowl game coming up on Wednesday. I'm very curious to see how much Devin Dampier actually plays in that game. But John Henry Daley announcing he's entering the transfer portal probably should have been expected outside of, as I mentioned earlier in the show, I didn't know he was going to be healthy. You're talking about a guy who I believe it was an Achilles injury, right? And the belief that he tore his Achilles.
I don't know
if it's been reported.
We don't really know the extent.
I think that's been the speculation, though, is that he tore his Achilles. And, you know, every sport is different. Football guys come back from Achilles certainly more quickly than they do in the NBA. But an edge rusher, it's the movement you snap your Achilles on generally is that step back to propel forward. That's when NBA players certainly do it. That's what you do as a defensive end. So I'm very curious to see, A, if he's healthy enough to actually play. He says he's going to be cleared by spring. He knows. The doctors know. But go out and get paid. And I suspect that's what's going to happen. And I don't know if Utah can even gamble on a player like that at this point, considering what they're going to have to put together.
Like that?
Dang. It's trying to go a whole week without it. What they're going to have to put together to be competitive next year with as much as they're losing. So losing John Henry Daley is a big deal. I kind of thought he was going to be out for the season already next year. So losing him maybe not the hugest setback. In fact, I think I said to you off the air yesterday, Christian, it's probably not the worst thing that he's injured the way he is because maybe he'll come back to Utah in 2 years. Clearly, that's not going to be the case. He expects to be healthy now. I would imagine that he will be following Kyle Whittingham to Michigan, but maybe not. You know, you go out and you're the highest. You go to the highest bidder. He was an All-American and was really a terrific talent and a game wrecker for the University of Utah defense. Just another major piece they're going to have to move on from and figure out how to replace. And you may have to do it with an entirely new set of coaches if a Lewis Powell leaves. And Utah's got to look in that direction as well to find out who's going to be coming in and leading that side of the ball. So I'm curious to see what this looks like for Utah if what Josh Furlong said yesterday is true, and he believes there's probably a 90% chance that Devin Dampier leaves as well. I mean, you're just talking about an entirely new identity at Utah. And that was already expected somewhat because you have a new head coach. You were going to bring in a new defensive coordinator. I don't think anyone thought Jason Beck was going to be leaving when Kyle Whittingham stepped down initially. But this is also just the life of the transfer portal. Not everything can be tagged on you've got a new head coach or you've got new coordinators. Guys just enter the transfer portal. And if you're good, it's stupid, but the transfer portal is stupid and the way NIL works is stupid. If you're good, you should enter the transfer portal. Even if you want to come back, you might as well go and test the waters and see what money's out there.
Yeah, worst case scenario, it's just a bargaining chip, right? Leverage, get more money.
Get a sense of your worth. Or get the same money back. But there's no reason, you're not going to lose money for the most part by entering the transfer portal if you decide to come back. But yeah, just put the heat on everyone around you. I just can't imagine it. You know, you look at the NBA, which I cover, so I know I bring it up a lot, but you have 15 players and maybe 5 of them are free agents every year that you have to deal with and figure out that movement. 100 players that are free agents every offseason if they want to be, and 40 of them are really worth bringing back probably every season. Maybe it's as good as 60 that you want to bring back every year, and you've got to deal with how to spend that money. It's ridiculous, and someone's always coming to poach you. We'll see where John Henry Daley winds up. But honestly, the good news for him as a young person is that he's going to be healthy next year.
Yeah, that really makes me wonder if it wasn't a torn Achilles. It just blows my mind. If that was the injury, he tore it in a late season, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't early on. And for him to say that he's going to be fully healthy by spring, it must not have been as bad.
Or maybe it wasn't a full tear.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly there. All right, what's next?
Number 2, the NBA released the first round of All-Star voting. Lauri Markkanen just outside the picture. He was top 16 in Western Conference votes.
Over 110,000 votes. He had 112,000 overall. They've only been open for 12 days. That is a good sign. I mean, people are noticing what he's doing. I do think when you have a 50-point game like he's had early in the season, he had 2. He just had the one 50-point game and several 40-point games. That's a good sign, and fans around the league are taking notice. Now, Remember, and it's the ultimate cat in the wall for the NBA, and one of the things they've screwed up the most under Adam Silver is that the new format,
cat in the wall, eh?
the new format of the All-Star Game is going to feature 3 teams, not just 2, and it's not Western Conference and Eastern Conference. It's 2 teams made up of players born in the United States and 1 team made up of players born internationally. Now, that also counts Canada. So there are 5-ish players that are locks to be in the international roster, assuming they're healthy. Luka, Giannis, Jokic, Wemby, and
Shea
Gilgeous-Alexander as a Canadian. Then Lowry's competing with the Deni Avdias, the Jamal Murrays, the Pascal Siakams, the OG Anunobys, and the Karl Anthony Towns, who was born in the islands and says he wants to play for Team World. It's actually probably better for his all-star bid to try and get to the international team. It's probably easier to make it as opposed to competing with other American centers or United States centers. For Cat specifically.
Yeah. But it hurts Lauri.
Because it takes up one of those spots. Now, where this does get weird is that the voting doesn't change. When you are a fan voting, you don't go and fill out 16 American-born players or U.S.-born players and 8 international players. You just vote for the best players, and the league hopes, and is probably somewhat rightfully so, that you're only actually voting for the starters. The starters get picked 50% fan vote, 25% media vote, 25% player vote, and then the league's coaches choose the reserves for every roster. And if this sounds convoluted, it's because it is. And it's one of the weird things the NBA has always done. The league kind of expects that the coaches will fill out these rosters appropriately. And if they don't, to get to 3 8-man rosters, then Adam Silver will step in and assign players where they need to be to make sure that there's a full 8-man roster on each spot. Those teams then play 3 games. I believe it's to 25. It's a true round robin. And then there's a championship game that comes out of it. It's going to be so many moving pieces, and it's going to be non-competitive, that the build-up and the conversation I just had describing to you what it is somehow going to be more exciting than the actual games itself, which is a bad sign.
And it might be the only year they do it. I mean, they did a one-and-done format last year, and then they already changed it.
Which is the problem. You just have to commit to something. And truthfully, just commit to East versus West. It's what it's always been. You get stars that break out. You get fun moments. Every 4th game is somewhat interesting. The other 3 are bad. It's All-Star Weekend. It's about selling ad space. I know people don't love watching it. It's because the players don't care. I don't know if you're going to make the players care. They used to care in the 90s somewhat. I know we like to romanticize what those games looked like. Those games were also being scored in the 150s and 160s. And yes, in the 4th quarter, they would get competitive. I think if you just sat back, didn't tinker with anything, and let these players get into the 4th quarter and the games were kind of close, the guys would step up and start playing hard. I think that's what you just have to bet on. The idea of changing it to Team USA versus the world. I know that's what happened. It's what they did in the NHL last year, and it was very competitive, where they did the hockey tournament last season in season, and it worked really well, and people were excited about it. They're trying to replicate that. I don't think you're going to be able to do it in the NBA. It's just too much money. These guys make too much money. Yes, certainly there's pride for your country. These guys all have it, but I don't think you're going to see it translate when they go down and play in Los Angeles at the Intuit Dome.
Yeah.
I wish it was better. It's not, but they're trying to monkey with it too much. It's not going to help.
We're so far removed from players caring about the All-Star game that it seems impossible to bring it back to that level.
And the NFL's had the same problem, and Major League Baseball's had the same problem. It's because All-Star games, as fun as they are, or the idea is, in practicality, they're not that effective. All right, what's next?
Last night, Utah Mammoth lose 4-3 to the Nashville Predators. Mammoth win percentage dropping below 500 now.
Up 3-2 going into the 3rd period. Steven Stamkos really took over late there, and that's the problem with letting people hang out. Vanacek in between the pipes as the goaltender, with Vermelka out with an upper body injury. It sounds like he's day-to-day. It's just not been good enough for Utah. Vanacek's not been a good backup goaltender. It was nice last year when you had Connor Ingram and Vermelka as the backup. Vanacek has not been great. Vermelka hasn't been terrific when he's been in the pipes either. So it's an issue for the Mammoth, and until they get Vermelka back, they're going to see more higher scoring games like this, and the defense is going to have to step up. They're going to have to execute better on the power play. They were terrible last night. We will talk to Cole Bagley about the Mammoth and their issues coming up at 11:30. It is time to give away some Jazz tickets because it is Tuesday. Be caller number 12 right now, 801-575-ZONE, 801-575-ZONE, and win a pair of tickets to see the Jazz take on the Dallas Mavericks on Thursday January 8th. That's a week from Thursday at the Delta Center, 7 p.m. 801-575-ZONE. 12th caller through right now. When we come back, we'll talk more about Kyle Whittingham to Michigan. Stick around. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Who's got it better than us?
Your home for the best sports coverage in Utah. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. A very happy Tuesday to everybody out there. Christian, it looks like your Broncos are going to back into that number 1 seed.
Back in, yeah. They tried to blow it. They lost to the Jags.
Well, no one did it as bad as the Steelers over the weekend, who lost to the Browns with a chance to guarantee a playoff spot. Now they have to go and beat the Ravens in a must-win game on the final week of the season to make it in there. So we'll see how Rodgers could be the last game of his career. You think Rodgers is done after this year?
I do. I also thought it was funny last night. Matt Stafford all but had the MVP award locked up, and he went and threw 3 interceptions in one game. Basically handed the MVP to Drake May.
Drake May going to win it?
I think so.
Drake May had his best game of his career.
5 touchdowns.
5 touchdowns. Brock Purdy was also good over the weekend. Stephon Diggs having a horrible day today, but Stephon Diggs is a moron. Getting charged with strangulation earlier this month. Was it early in December in Massachusetts? So he's facing a felony charge now, right as the Patriots are getting ready to gear up for a deep playoff run. You know, this is alleged. We'll see what ends up happening with him, but kind of been the issue with him all along. Bills have faded throughout the season and just been one of the more disappointing teams, as they are seemingly every year. So we'll get some new faces in the playoffs this year. I'm excited. We are not going to see Mahomes Mahomes at the very least. We're not going to see him in the AFC Championship game. So we'll see. I'm excited to watch some of these NFL playoffs. I think it's some fresh meat that'll be good for the NFL, as it always is. Not that the NFL is not a juggernaut when it comes to throwing out new faces, but we're going to see some new teams competing and some young stars, which I think is going to be exciting.
Yeah, and it's weird. This year feels like one of the first years where the AFC does not have any juggernauts in the playoffs. Traditionally, it's felt that way with Mahomes and Burrow and Josh Allen. Now it's the NFC. Funny enough, with the Seahawks and Sam Darnold, they look really good, and the Rams and the 49ers. It feels like the Super Bowl winner is going to be one of those 3 teams.
So who's got the most on the line when it comes to legacy? Is it Matt Stafford? I mean, Matt Stafford's already won a title. He's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Honestly, Josh Allen, I think.
Yeah, Josh Allen's a good one.
He needs the Super Bowl win, and this year, again, with no Mahomes, no Burrow, he's going to be the most experienced quarterback in the AFC picture. And it really feels like if he doesn't get it this year, he probably never will. Yeah,
because I don't think the Patriots are going to fade away. And if they aren't able to keep it up in Buffalo, the Patriots are going to stay strong. I mean, you have Drake May for a long time. I mean, Drake May's young and on the rise. So, going to be a tough spot for the Bills. That's kind of always where the Bills are. All right, we're going to talk to Steve Bartle coming up here in about 15 minutes. But I do want to look at the Jay Hill situation and the fact that he hasn't signed. And the fact that Penn State didn't make Kalani Sitake put pen to paper the second he agreed to that deal, which then ended up falling apart and whatever happened, he's staying at BYU. I do think the longer this goes on, the better it is for BYU.
You think the Crumble CEO is going to get off the chair?
I don't want Jay Hill, if he wants to come to Michigan, going back and talking to BYU and being able to be wooed by whatever they can offer, which apparently is somewhat bottomless. Now, I don't actually believe that. I do think there's going to be a limit to how much money they can throw at people. I know they have more and more and more, but if Jay Hill gets paid more, then A-Rod has a reason to ask for more. And if A-Rod has a reason to ask for more, Kevin Young has a reason to ask for more, and all of Kevin's assistants have a reason to ask for more. It's just, there's not actually unlimited money.
Eventually, you're going to have to say no to somebody. And is Jay Hill the guy? Is A-Rod the guy? I'm not sure. So if I'm Kyle Whittingham, I want to get this wrapped up. I understand if you're trying to announce them both and you don't want to announce them both until after Utah has wrapped up their season, which is tomorrow when they take on Nebraska in the Las Vegas Bowl, and you feel like you can announce Jason Beck then with Jay Hill. But I don't think you need to wait for that. I think the sooner you can get these names on paper, the better off you're going to be. So the fact that BYU hasn't allowed that to happen yet, or Whittingham hasn't been able to close that deal yet, is not a terrible sign for BYU. Now, maybe it's still very likely it goes, and they're just waiting on some of the buyout issues. I don't know how all that stuff works behind the scenes, certainly with Jay Hill, but I don't know. The longer this stuff waits, the trickier it feels like it can get.
I totally agree. And funny enough, I almost feel like if I were Utah, I would want Jason Beck announced before the bowl game.
Okay.
Just, it doesn't make sense to have him there, you know. Whit is already gone.
Yeah, Whit's gone. I wonder if you would feel like you'd lose Devin Dampier if Jason Beck transfers, or if Jason Beck announces he's leaving, if Devin Dampier says he's not going to play. I mean, those
Could
guys
be,
know.
What does that matter?
Those guys know Jason Beck's not going to be back.
It's the Las Vegas Bowl against Nebraska.
I'm with you. Bowl games already don't matter. Specifically, these bowl games don't matter. And look, if I'm Utah and I don't think Devin Dampier is going to be my quarterback next year, I'm probably playing Bird Ficklin.
Yeah.
I probably want to see as much Bird as I can to get him out there in a high-profile game like this. So he is comfortable with being the starter going forward of this team if Dampier is not going to be back next year. We'll see which direction they end up heading and who gets the majority of the snaps coming tomorrow. We'll catch up with somebody from Nebraska, get an idea of kind of a preview of that game, and obviously excited to talk to Steve about that coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Is there a reason why Jay shouldn't leave for Michigan?
I honestly don't think so, because if you think that his ultimate goal is to be a head coach, Kyle Whittingham signed a 5-year deal at Michigan. I don't think he's going to last 5 years.
Nobody does.
So what happens then? Unless he's fired and Michigan wants to completely move on from anybody that was on Witt's staff, it makes sense that they would just promote Jay after Witt leaves.
I don't think there's a situation where Jay Hill wouldn't be welcomed back to either Utah or BYU or somewhere as a D coordinator, regardless of what happens at Michigan. You know, if let's say Witt goes there, brings Jay Hill, it falls flat, and Witt gets fired after the second season, and they clean house, I don't think that would tarnish Jay Hill locally.
No.
So to that point, I imagine he's going to make more money at Michigan. And if things go well, which is on the flip side, his name is in the running, not just for the Michigan job, but if you're a good defensive coordinator and you're younger and you had success at BYU and it follows you to Michigan, you're in the running for every head coaching job. You know, the D coordinator at Michigan is one of the sexy positions when it comes to hiring coordinators everywhere in the country. You can go get a job as a head man in the Big 12, or potentially probably not a top SEC school, but a good SEC school, certainly a good ACC school, maybe a Big 10 school as well if you're leaving Michigan. So I'm not sure I understand not leaving unless he doesn't feel like he wants to be a head coach. And if he decided, you know what, I like being a coordinator, which some guys do. Some guys really do like being coordinators and do not want to be the head man. I don't think that's the case with Jay. But if he says, I like where I am, it's relatively safe, as long as Kalani's here, which seems like he's got a lifetime stamp of how long he wants to be the head coach, I'm going to be his go-to guy, and my life's going to be rich. I'm going to be around my family. I'm going to be in a culture I like. I could see that as well. I think that's the only sell, though. I'm not really sure why he wouldn't leave, because the opportunity to become a head coach doesn't get easier at BYU than it would at Michigan.
I never would have thought that Kyle Whittingham would travel, take this job 2,000 miles away when he's said so many times he wants to spend time with his grandkids, yada, yada, yada. So you never know. I have seen a lot of people wondering, if maybe Jay Hill's health would have something to do with it, because he did have the heart attack last year.
Absolutely.
He recovered from it amazingly and led BYU to having a really great defense over the past 2 seasons. So I don't know how much that is affecting things, but it does make sense, logically, to just keep moving on up and up. That's why you become a coach.
And that is what coaches are made of. They are built that way for the most part. Not everyone. You can't paint with that broad of a brush, but basically every coach I've met, assistant or otherwise, has the idea of at one point being the biggest voice in the room. And I would imagine Jay Hill still feels that way, which is why he left Utah in the first place to go to Weber State, had success, couldn't pass on the raise he got at BYU, and then would want to continue to make that jump further. And I'm curious. I'm curious the pathway to become a head coach and the schools he would be eligible for at BYU, how different they are from Michigan. Probably somewhat significant, especially if they win at a high level there. All right, when we come back, we'll talk about this and more with the University of Utah. Steve Bartle's going to join us, give us a breakdown on Morgan Scalley and what he thinks is next for Utah in the coming months. Stick around, Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.